Sure, thank you. Let me just share my screen. As I mentioned, I am Proscovia Alando, the founder at Samaky Hub, where we offer aquaculture consultancy at the moment. So today I'll be speaking about my role in food system transformation and basically just what I'm doing, the challenges I've been facing, and also the interconnectedness of how the food system is connected and how everything is affecting the other. So my background, as I mentioned, is in aquaculture, both for my undergraduate and postgraduate. And currently I work in the seafood industry. And what I see, the nature of the food systems that I'm working in, there is the challenge of overfishing. There's a challenge of women's underrepresentation in aquaculture. We have unsustainable seafood production. We have low fish consumption, especially in Kenya, where at the moment, the fish consumption is at 4 kg per capita per year compared to the global average of 20 kg. And we also have food waste and loss. And when you look at the seafood sector, we find that up to 37% of fish goes to waste post-harvest. So there's a huge challenge that we are facing. And when we look at the fisheries sector, we know that it does have a role to play, where it directly supports about 60 million people and addresses nutritional needs. And we know that seafood is a source of omega-3 and also a source of micronutrients, in addition to being a source of fish meal for animal feed formulation. However, when you look at the fish stock status, we find that 17% have been overexploited, while 7% has been depleted. And this negative impact of overfishing have led to ecosystem disruption, where you find that harmful fishing methods harm the seafloor. We've seen loss of biodiversity, where targeting a few key species disrupts food webs. And we've also seen decline in fish meal availability. And this one has directly impacted the aquaculture sector. When you look at the aquaculture, there is a huge challenge of fish meal. You find that in aquaculture, feeds account for up to 70% of the total production cost. And the high cost of production is due to high cost of protein. And traditionally, the protein that we've been using to formulate feeds for fish is fish meal. And we've just seen why fish meal is expensive because of overfishing, illegal fishing, and pollution. So we already start to see the connection. And currently, as we speak, there is an inconsistent supply and quality of fish meal. And personally, I have been affected by this directly because after completing my studies, I wanted to establish a fish farming enterprise to provide healthy nutrition, to create a means of livelihood while conserving the environment. But I faced so many challenges as a young woman, and also as a young woman, so as youth and as a woman in aquaculture, which I believe are similar challenges that are being faced by others. And one of that is limited capital and high cost of production. So you find that usually the high cost of production is due to high cost of feeds. We also have limited access to resources, and you find that in most African communities, most women do not own land, so you cannot even use land as collateral for loan. There's also underrepresentation in decision making, which limits our ability to influence policies, practices, and investments as youth and as women, especially in some African communities where women have no voice, in addition to limited access to financing opportunities. And so I really wanted to make a change because I was keen on sustainable food production and I was facing all these challenges. I did have some savings, but the savings were not enough to establish a fish farming enterprise. I decided to apply for jobs. And of course, in Kenya, there are limited employment opportunities. So there were no jobs. And so the only way that I could establish a fish farming enterprise was to find a way to lower my cost of production. And that led me to Ressect. Ressect is a startup that is specialized in farming black soldier fly insects as alternative protein source in animal feed formulation. So I'll briefly go through Ressect for those who may not be aware of the black soldier fly farming. So the black soldier fly is a black fly with white legs, and it's a good protein source, contains about 42% of protein and 35% of fat. In addition to being a source of calcium and vitamins, they do not spread diseases, unlike the housefly. They're not aggressive and they're not pests. And usually the larval stage of the black soldier fly is used as alternative protein for animal feed formulation. When you look at the amino acid profile of the black soldier fly larvae meal, the housefly larvae meal, and that of fish meal, you find that of black soldier fly larvae meal is equal to or greater than that of fish meal. So it can be used as alternative protein source for fish feed formulation. Black soldier fly production is circular, where waste from one system can be used as input in another system. For instance, the black soldier fly larvae can feed on various types of organic waste, including agricultural waste or animal manure. And in turn, the black soldier fly larvae can be used as feed for poultry, fish, and pigs, in addition to the byproduct of the whole black soldier fly production being used as a biofertilizer for crops production. There have been trials on use of black soldier fly larvae in fish feed, and the findings have shown that the larvae can replace fish meal as a protein source, and the larvae does not affect the taste of fish. And the use of black soldier fly larvae can reduce the cost of production for aquaculture. And usually the fat and protein content will vary depending on the type of rearing substrate. These are just a few articles highlighting the findings of use of black soldier fly larvae. Our role in promoting sustainable aquatic food system is to reduce pressure on wild caught fish, and we do this in two ways: by providing alternative protein and encouraging sustainable fish farming, and also practicing sustainable fish farming by working with various people in the seafood industry. We aim to provide healthy and affordable protein, both the insect and fish, and to do circular production and consumption where nothing goes to waste. And for this, we realize that there needs to be a coordination between the fisheries sector and the aquaculture sector, because we can't rely on one of them only. When you look at this graph, you find that the capture fisheries has stagnated and aquaculture has been increasing over time. And sometimes there might be resource use conflict, where you find that the fisher folk might have a conflict with the fish farming communities, or vice versa. So there needs to be coordination and collaboration in this sector. And so briefly about my work and people that I work with in order to try and working towards transforming the food systems. I did my postgraduate at the University of Stirling. I studied sustainable aquaculture through a fully funded Commonwealth scholarship, and at the moment I work with two organizations, that is Samaky Hub and Ressect, where we're trying to transform the food systems, because we realize that there is a lot that needs to be done, a lot of stakeholder engagement. And for these other organizations, I'll briefly share about some of them. For instance, the African Food Fellowship, I was part of the first cohort where I was an aquaculture fellow. I have been an aquaculture fellow, and we're working to transform aquaculture in Kenya. And here I work with various stakeholders in aquaculture. And so it makes it easier to coordinate and collaborate, and also share about the changes that I would like to see. Ressect has also been part of Living Lab by Refuture. Refuture is an initiative by Wageningen University that focuses on regenerative agriculture. And the the idea of the lab is to explore pathways to transform the food systems. And Refisher is supporting Ressect. It's supporting us to do biofertilizer experiments where we're trying to use the byproduct of the insect production for crop farming as biofertilizer. I'm also working with Sustain, and the aim of Sustain is to build sustainable ventures along the fish farming value chain in East Africa. So working with various stakeholders across the aquaculture value chain, and Sustain supports or engages its portfolio companies in different ways, including active farm management, capacity building, business development, financing, and also training, and more, trying to encourage sustainable aquaculture production. I also write with the fish site, where I focus on aquaculture in sub-Saharan Africa and how to make the industry sustainable and inclusive. I also focus on featuring women and youth in aquaculture and trying to share their stories and connect them with a global audience and trying to empower them as well. And finally, I work with the Lexicon and GSSI to develop a seafood map. And as the name suggests, it's an actual map, but with a focus on seafood. The seafood map is initiated by GSSI, and it's a working group that brings experts and stakeholders across the seafood industry, both from the aquaculture and fisheries sector. And these include producers, purchasers, distributors, and organizations, various types of organizations that are affiliated in the seafood industry. And the objective is to develop a series of market-driven tools to increase consumer awareness, to strengthen the aquaculture and fisheries sector, and to build a digital platform for matchmaking producers and buyers, in addition to so many other things, including learning resources and more. And I'm happy to share more after this. And so with all this, of course, there have been challenges as usual. And one of the major challenges has been financial constraints. So you find that most change requires significant investment of time and money. And of course, as youth and women, we've seen the challenges with that. There's also, you find that the existing policies and regulations, sometimes they may favor large-scale industrial agriculture, making it difficult for smaller and more sustainable producers like us to compete. And cultural barriers, you find that it's difficult to change eating habits and food preferences for so many people. So maybe if I may ask, like in this call, how many of us have eaten insects by a show of hands? Yeah, that is good. So you find that because we are involved in the insect farming, which is something new, it's difficult to encourage some people that they can feed on insects. And so telling them you can farm insects, you can use it as a sustainable source of food, you can use it as a nutrient-rich food, it can be difficult to convince some people. And sometimes you find that in Kenya, we have the non-fish eating communities. So also to encourage someone to eat fish because of the health benefits, it can be difficult sometimes. But the more, yes?
Just a small 2-minute warning here.
Okay, no, I'm actually on my last slide. So the more you try to encourage people to change their eating habits, it can be challenging. The challenge is infrastructure, and especially transport and storage. You find that this is not optimized for supporting sustainable and local food systems. And we've seen that because of this challenge, especially in the aquaculture sector, we experience high post-harvest losses because of lack of storage facilities or poor infrastructure. And finally, lack of political will. Sometimes there is insufficient resources, or we may face resistance from vested interests. And so there needs to be education to help people understand the benefits of sustainable food systems and the impact of the current system on the environment and public health. Thank you, and let's connect.